Hello, Adrian Ashton here, your tutor, guide through this specialism on social enterprise. This is tutorial one in the strand, cunningly titled, What is Social Enterprise? Because it struck us that actually, rather than get into the detail of social enterprises and the different considerations and facets and elements of them, it's actually quite important to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. Now, this might sound like a bit of a strange starting point because we'd say, well, actually, social enterprise is social enterprise. We all have a vague idea what it is, but I'm pretty sure that if everyone who's following this specialism at this point in time when you're starting it, if you all emailed me separately what you think your definition is or how you would describe a social enterprise to someone else, we'd probably come up with different definitions. And that's just not me blowing smoke. I was at a conference a few years ago having a conversation with a leading senior management within a housing association. And we had a lecturer from a university in our group as well, and then someone from a government support program as well. And we're talking about social enterprise and how important it is for the future of the country and communities. And all of a sudden, I got the sense that they weren't talking the same language as each other. They all seemed to be coming at it from a slightly different perspective. So I played a little game and I said, hey, everyone, just bear with me a moment. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to play a little game here. And I asked each of them just to get a post-it note out and say, look, just write down what you think a social enterprise is, just to make sure that I've understood what you're saying properly. And so, oh, this is a bit odd, but to their credit, they all indulged me and they went through the process. And I looked at the post-it notes and I said, oh, this explains it. All three of you have come up with a different working definition of social enterprise. You all think it's something slightly different to each other. And that's why you're having trouble in reaching an agreement, because the points you're making are all valid. But because you think social enterprise is something different to the other two, this is why you keep butting up against each other. And now, part of the challenge in defining social enterprise is there is no legal definition. Okay, but how can we have something without a legal definition? Well, it happens in lots of parts of this world, I'm afraid. So we have this thing that social enterprise, it's a slippery beast. What do we mean? How do we define it? Some people would say, well, it's a social enterprise because we look at it, we look out of the window and we see a business that's doing good things. It calls itself a social enterprise and it's doing good things to help the environment, the community. That's it. Well, I could argue that you could look at McDonald's, the fast food chain, and say, if you look at what they do in terms of employee welfare, local community support, environmental impact, both locally and globally, the way they treat their suppliers, the way they consider animal welfare, and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, they should be a social enterprise, but they're not. So having this sense of what we do isn't enough. There has to be something else that comes with it. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to dig down and look at some of the challenges about how we define a social enterprise and actually what the working definition is in the absence of a legal form. Now, the approach we've taken in this tutorial is actually based in history, okay? Because social enterprise having a slippery definition is not new. We have a precedent to this. In the wider cooperative movement, there's a similar challenge in that there's no single overarching legal definition for what a cooperative business should be. They can come in lots of different forms. A cooperative business can be an industrial and provident society. It can be a community benefit society. It can be a partnership. It can be an unincorporated association. It can be a limited company. And so it goes. So they can come in lots of these cooperative things come in lots of different weird legal forms and shapes. And beyond that, they also come in different flavors. So we have these things called worker cooperatives, which are businesses that are owned by the workers. We have consumer cooperatives, businesses that are owned by the customers. Housing cooperatives, which are housing associations that are owned by the tenants. And so it goes. So you start to go, well, this gets really crazy and confusing. Lots of different types of management styles, ownership models, trading activities, business structures, but you all call yourself a cooperative. How come? They have a unifying code. Cooperatives globally share a set of values and principles that define them. If you want to know more about that, quickly have a quick look up on either Cooperatives UK's website or the International Cooperative Association, the ICA. Now, that's actually a blessing. So some people will look at it and go, but we don't have a legal definition. It can come in lots of different forms and structures. That's a bad thing. It makes it hard to engage with the marketplace. It makes it hard to understand and convey to other people what it is. But actually, in being defined by their values and principles, cooperatives have much more flexibility to reimagine what their business model can be and should be, how they trade, how they respond to communities, how they address different needs in different ways. So actually, not having an overarching legal definition can be quite empowering and enlightening. And so it is for social enterprise. Not being constrained to a tight, rigid definition means that there's all sorts of beautiful diversity across the sector. It's a bit like Star Trek, okay? Remember Star Trek? The Vulcans live long and prosper? Their motto, the Vulcan motto, is IDIC, IDIC, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. It's a reflection of their philosophy that says we see the universe as this amazing place. Anything and everything is possible and should be possible, and we want to encourage it to be possible. Social enterprises are a bit like Vulcans in that way. The flexibility of not being tied to a single legal definition means they can have infinite diversity in infinite combinations. They can be that kind of beautiful universal coverage. But there needs to be something that roots them and grounds them, to define them, to differentiate them from private businesses, from traditional charities, from government and public services, so we can better understand and appreciate what they are and how we support them. So just as with cooperatives, there are different types of cooperatives. I've said worker cooperatives, housing cooperatives, consumer cooperatives. So that diversity is true within social enterprise. Social enterprise is a broad umbrella term. Underneath it sit social enterprises, but also cooperatives. We have these things called social firms, which are a type of social enterprise. We have these things called development trusts, intermediate labour markets, and so it goes. So social enterprise comes in lots of different flavors and types. And again, through this tutorial, we'll start to actually unpick and define what some of these different specific types of social enterprise can be, by the way they identify themselves, by the way they position themselves in a community, or the issue or need that they're trying to address in a community or in society or in the environment or in the economy. And that's important. The other thing as well, as we go through this module, this tutorial section, is we'll kind of say, well, what's the point? Why is everyone banging on about social enterprise? Why is it that we see it in government policy? Why is it that we see careers advisors and private businesses saying, oh yes, social enterprise, it's the future. We should all become social entrepreneurs. We should all set up a social enterprise. Social enterprises will save us. They'll fix all the problems. So this tutorial will also actually start to break down and explore what some of those motivation, those external drivers are, which have meant social enterprise now enjoys such prominence in our conversations on social media, in marketplaces, in support programs, and in the curriculum and as part of university life. Because I have this idea that unless we understand where something's come from and what's influenced it to get it to the point of where it is today, it's very hard for us to properly appreciate how we engage with it and we respond to it. It's also harder for us to understand it. For example, if we don't understand that as a global society, as a global species, we've been spending over 6,000 years to get to the point where we've globally agreed this is kind of how we do bookkeeping. Okay? 6,000 years as a society to get to the point of saying this is how bookkeeping works in any business or charity or group. That kind of makes it a bit easier then, if you want to learn how to do accounts, to approach it. It may still hurt your head a bit, but at least you understand why we've got to the point that we have and why we're probably not going to change it anytime soon. It gives you a different perspective. And that's the idea of this first tutorial, to help give you the perspective and the overview of what this thing called social enterprise is about, why everyone's talking about it, and actually how it can be a good thing. Also within the tutorial, we'll be looking at some of the specific business cases for social enterprise. Why might a social enterprise be a better idea to set up than a charity, a traditional charity, or a private business that tries to do a good thing? We'll also include links in terms of so where you can go out and do some further reading. So within this tutorial and the content that we've created for it, we've not got loads of case studies that you can look up because there are plenty of places on the internet already that are full to bursting with case studies, with video clips, talking heads, loads of pictures, the histories, the successes, the failures, the parties. So what we're going to do within this tutorial is put some links so you can go off and start to explore those a bit more for yourselves. So that's tutorial 1. We're going to be defining and understanding what social enterprise as a phrase actually means and why it might be relevant.